Hello, I'm Pola, and this is the final interview with John Byrne before he steps down as editor-in-chief of Poets and Quants, having founded the publication, what, 2 decades ago, John?
Ooh, quite a while ago, 16 years, I think, actually. Not that I'm counting. And, final interview sounds so morbid.
That's why I said as you step down. I'm sure there will be more
Indeed,
after you've stepped down.
that's very true.
But you're, what, is it 8 hours away from retirement now?
Pretty much, although I probably owe one story and that will be done very quickly.
So, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling great. I've been working since I was 12 years of age. So that puts it at over 60 years. And while I'm ending this chapter, I think that I've always wanted a really productive life. So retirement to me still means doing things, although it means doing things on I'd say a diminished level because I want to make room for other things in my life. And that includes family, that includes watching more movies, listening to more music, sailing or learning to sail a boat. I started to do that last year. Um, just and taking care of my health. It'd be nice to be starting every single day, on a treadmill or outside, getting some sunshine without fail, because I don't have to worry about meeting deadlines and other things.
I was going to say you're definitely going to be a lot more fit than I am if you're starting every day on a treadmill. That's another aspirational John Byrne thing for me to hope to do. But you chose to write what two stories in your final day of work? You've still
Yes,
got those to file?
yes, which, one is almost there, needs a table in HTML code, which is a little complicated, and that's time consuming. And then maybe a half dozen paragraphs to add to what I've already written. The other one is much more involved and complicated and probably requires 5, 6 hours of work solid.
So here's a question. Why have you chosen to do this to yourself on your final day before retirement?
It's not like I assigned it to myself. It's just that things have gotten in the way of getting this stuff done. And anyone who knows me knows that I work really well on intense deadlines. I mean, in the years that I worked for Business Week and I wrote many cover stories, frankly, I would get up at 4:30 in the morning. I would write and deliver that story to my editor by 9:30 or 10. And that's a cover story. So, I'm very good under pressure generally, and that hasn't changed even with my old age.
Mature age.
Yeah,
Uh, so yeah, looking back, I'm curious, what's a piece of advice that someone's given you that has stayed with you and kind of shaped the way that you've led Poets and Quants?
I don't know that anyone really gave me this advice. I mean, there are certain values that people instilled in me, in particular, my mentor back in my undergraduate years. I had the fortune of meeting sort of a crusty curmudgeon, uh, old school journalist who had been the city editor of the Rochester Times Union. I was in his class, his very first class, Journalism 101, as a junior when I had just taken over my college weekly. And the first thing I did was to ask him to be our faculty advisor. It was a big ask um, because I had strong journalistic intentions, which meant also writing, controversial and provocative stories on the college paper, which the community wasn't used to, and changing what had essentially been a social club into a real training ground for journalists. He agreed, and I think beyond the critiques, the weekly autopsies that we did on the newspaper, going over, misaligned leads, poor nut graphs, typos and headlines and decks, poor story selection. The more important takeaway was a series of values that he instilled, that integrity really matters, that it's all about the facts and not the myths and the lies that often percolate our life. Um, it's about hard work and discipline and accomplishing things through other people. And those things have always lived with me. But I think more than anything else, I have this basic philosophy, which is all of life is just getting stuff done. And you can talk all you want, you can theorize all you want, you can procrastinate all you want. But the truth is that both in a professional and personal way, getting stuff done is all that matters. And I've really kind of dedicated myself to getting stuff done. And
Fair enough.
uh,
Clearly
and
that's happened.
and sweeping away all the distractions in life and the excuses that prevent people from doing that. And that's
Mm.
been true throughout my entire life. We're speaking. You're in London. I spent some early years of my life in London as London bureau chief. Then I came to New York and worked for Forbes magazine. Then I was recruited to go to Business Week. Then, after many years, I was recruited to be the editor-in-chief of Fast Company magazine. Then I was lured back to Business Week to run the magazine as executive editor and ultimately the editor-in-chief of their online operation, which allowed me to see the potential of digital journalism and led to Poets and Quants and Sea Change Media, our parent company that runs Poets and Quants and 5 websites all told. And doing all the books that I've done. I've done over a dozen books, and including 2 New York Times bestsellers with well-known, very strong ego executives. So I've always tried to lead a productive life. And so producing content, producing stories that mattered, was really important to me. So, when one looks back and you look at the body of your work, what you want to do is you want to feel good about that. You
Mm.
want to feel good that in each of the places you've worked and the different things that you've done, that somehow it really mattered. And I've always said, even when I was mostly a magazine journalist, well before Poets and Quants, that my job was not to do stories that the magazine could run in between its ads.
Mm.
My stories were meant to make people think more deeply about what they do. And that meant sometimes provoking the reader or revealing things that the reader didn't know that were somehow consequential. And all that meant is covering the great drama of business because the tragedies, the successes, the wins and the losses in business matter to people. There's an emotional component to them, and above and beyond the numbers, the profits, there are people involved and people who get hurt, people who rise and find that they can do work that matters. And that's really what I've tried to focus on, really, the emotional side of the business world. In the Poets and Quants realm, what it has meant is going back in a way and looking at my own life and understanding how transformative higher education was in it. I am the product of 2 working class parents, neither of whom had the benefit of a college education. My mother could not read nor write, so all of my life's work she couldn't really fully appreciate. My father was a factory worker, and then he worked for the post office. He did have a high school diploma, but nothing more. Uh, so I feel like incredibly lucky because I applied to one school, luckily got in, and it changed my life.
Mm.
And and because it changed my life, I really kind of felt, boy, this would be a great opportunity to help others, to inform them to make smart choices about where they go, what they can expect, um, and how hard it is to get into a selective institution. I never really went to any elite institution at all. I went to two public universities, one a state college in New Jersey, and then for my graduate degree at the University of Missouri, another public university. But those experiences completely opened my eyes to what the world had to offer and really made a big difference to me. And I think that that's why I'm an unabashed advocate for higher education, despite the high costs, despite the controversies about higher
Mm.
education today that have become political and part of this polarization that we live in. Um, I still believe it's, a socioeconomic ladder that allows access to a world that many people are denied. And more important than that, it's not about money, it's about living a multidimensional life. You could go through life and, have a pretty nice life no matter where you are. You work hard and do the right things. But I think a higher education allows you to appreciate the complexities and the subtleties of what life is. And if you want a greater appreciation for culture, for art, for history, for philosophy, and you want to meet people who are like-minded and ambitious to learn those same things, you go to university, and that's where that happens. And that's to me the more likely bet that you will live a more fulfilled, meaningful life.
I think we agree on that point, and you've already said it much better than I could have, and I'm so glad that we got a walk through your work, professional history. Um,
And now
Probably
you and
something.
now you get to be a great advocate.
I hope so.
And
I'll
being
have
an
to,
advocate also means not being a cheerleader, right?
yeah.
Because there are really significant issues in higher education where the politics are thick. People walk around with knives stuck out of their backs. Um, Tuition is way too high, much higher than it should be because schools have not exercised the fiscal responsibility that they should have over many, many decades, where the cost of education has risen well beyond the inflation rise. And so, and there are many more issues than that, as we know, keeping up with the times, what AI will do to the future of work and the future of education, and our own personal lives. There's some big issues, and you're going to have
Turbulent
a lot of
times.
fun exploring
Mm.
those issues, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. So back to Poets and Quants.
Yes.
I probably should have asked you this at some point in the interview process, but why Poets and Quants? And
Oh,
are
you
you
mean
are
the
you the
title
poet in
itself?
Poets in Quants?
Oh, you mean the title itself?
The title,
Okay,
yeah.
so when I started covering management education many, many years ago at largely at Business Week, but I started in a way at Forbes as well. I learned that there was a lingo that existed at many in many MBA programs where people who came in from the humanities, like me, right? Political science and English were my double major, and then I got the graduate degree in journalism. Were often referred to as poets, and the people who came in with undergraduate majors in math and sciences, the engineers and whatnot, were referred to as quants. And the interesting thing about that stereotype is that, the poets were thought to be more articulate, um, more able to communicate clearly, both in written and oral form, but pretty weak on numbers and uncomfortable with analyzing data. And the quants were just the opposite of that. They were really good at seeing patterns in data, weren't afraid of numbers, could crunch them really well, but had more challenges in terms of communicating, persuading, and collaborating with others as poets did. And so, to me, the great beauty of a business school that attracts a diverse class of candidates is that you're bringing the poets and quants together, you're building on their strengths, and you're minimizing their weaknesses. And that's the nature of all the teamwork and collaboration that occurs in a good business program. So, poets and quants seem to me the natural name for a provider that would provide both information and intelligence about that world. And it was sort of in the realm of when Google came out, everyone asked, "Well, what does that mean?" And when Yahoo came out, everyone said, "Well, what's that?" And I wanted people who were on the inside of this culture to kind of immediately know what it meant, but people who are on the outside to be mystified by it, frankly, in the same way that generations of people were mystified by Yahoo and Google.
And looking forward, how does the state of Poets and Quants, the partnership with THE, how do you feel about all of the way things look?
I'm very optimistic about things. While higher education is going through some significant challenges right now, and most of those challenges are related to government policy, and not only in the US, in other countries as well. There are governments that are under pressure because of immigration flows, and those pressures have led to restrictions on visas, and even more than visas, other things that make immigrants less welcome in many countries. And we're talking United Kingdom, we're talking Australia, Canada to some extent now, and certainly the US, given the Trump administration and all the anti-immigration rhetoric and action that's occurred here. That is the biggest threat to higher education in the world, because higher education has allowed for talent to flow across borders pretty freely for probably a quarter of a century and has made a difference. I mean, for the United States, I really believe that immigration is the single most responsible source of our strength and the growth and vitality of our country, because we've been able to attract the best and brightest all over the world for decade after decade after decade, because democracy and capitalism and the freedom that people have here that they often don't have in their own countries. And so to turn that spigot off is essentially to take away the single greatest advantage this country has had in the world in competing with others, which is insane. It will change, but there is permanent damage, and not only to higher education, but to other institutions that we rely on for our freedoms and for our way of thinking and learning. Um, but, you know, we have an unlimited supply in the world of young people who want to make a difference, who want to learn, who understand that learning is the foundation for doing something that means something, not only to an individual, but to a society, to a community. And higher education has done a really good job of cultivating and nurturing the best in people and teaching them how to become great citizens and great contributors. So I don't see any of that changing. And in business education, there are, some specific challenges. I think MBA tuition for full-time programs generally is way too high. The degree is overpriced. Yeah, there are significant discounts that are kind of hidden from public view. that make the degree more affordable, but in general, it's way overpriced. I think that there is a lot of clutter in the market. There are probably too many online degree programs. There are probably too many specialty master's programs. So I think those two areas of growth, which have been important to business education in the past decade or more, uh, are in need of consolidation. I think the explosion in undergraduate business has been a great thing. Um, but with AI destroying many entry-level jobs, I have concerns that the market will be unable to absorb all of the undergraduate majors that schools are producing. And I don't think that many of them will want to sell, life insurance or run a McDonald's franchise. And that's going to be a big concern and worry for the industry. And it is an industry moving forward. But the world has become more complex. The world has become more interdependent. The world has become more needy of talented, smart, skilled professional help. That's not going to change. I think that the stakes will only go higher, and that means that the future in general for business education, I think, is still very, very good and strong. And and I think that schools have demonstrated an ability to respond to market pressures very well. And I think AI is the latest example. There are some laggards out there, sure, but in general, I think schools do kind of get it. Business schools get it. In fact, they get it more than most other schools, other than engineering schools and computer science schools. That AI is really going to change things dramatically. Business schools have, in general, a more optimistic view of this. They see AI opening the door to many opportunities to people and increasing productivity in a way that will guarantee economic growth, which allows for more opportunity for everybody. Yep, there are going to be people who are going to lose their jobs, and there are going to be jobs that are going to be eliminated that won't be available to large numbers of people. But there may be, creation of jobs that we haven't even imagined.
Mm.
And it will make people more productive. There's no doubt about it. It's an incredibly powerful and disruptive technology. And I'm heartened by the fact that schools have quickly understood this, of changing their curriculum. They're moving from literacy to application. They're encouraging their students to use it, to build with it. These are all positive things.
Well, you anticipated my next question and more right there in that answer. I think you've just covered the next three off. But I guess to sum it up, you're a glass half full kind of a guy. Yes or no, are you still, despite everything that's going on in the world and all the pressures on business schools and education, are you still glass half full?
I am, and I'll tell you why. And this is interesting because, as people get older, I think they actually become more cynical about the future. But every generation has looked back over the shoulder and said weird things about the generation coming up, and that's true of my generation as well and my elders. I think it will always be true. But I always try to assure my friends that I meet talent in this job. I've met talent in this job year after year after year that gives me incredible hope about the future. I meet people with high integrity, with great ideals, who are terrifically smart, brilliant even, and they want to do something that matters, not merely to them, but to society. And having met so many of these people all over the world gives me great hope that the best is yet to come. And I really mean that.
Hmm, that is a very nice point to just about end on.
And
But I
Paula,
will
you're
ask
an
you.
example of this. You're going to be an example of this. The best is yet to come.
High praise.
No, it will, and also for you, for your own personal development, and knowing that you are going to touch the lives of tens of thousands of people all over the world in a positive way.
Mm,
One of the great feelings that I've had about creating Poets and Quants and running it for so long is the many testimonies we get, the testimonials that we get day in and day out from people who say, "Hey, you really made a difference. I went to this school. I followed Poets and Quants. It helped me make this choice, and it changed my life for the better." And you're gonna have the beautiful benefit of that. When you
mm,
know you're helping people make an informed, thoughtful, and important choice in their lives. Because I say, if you go for an MBA degree, for example, it's the second largest expense you'll make in your life outside of buying a home. Costs more than a car. May even cost more than a kid. Since at many schools, the price, including the opportunity cost, is well over $250,000. So it's a big decision for people to interrupt their careers and go for it. If we can help them figure out if it's right for them, if we can help them figure out how to get into a better school and make the right choice, and then we can help them land the right job for them and understand what those jobs are, that's a real positive thing.
mm.
You're going to be able to do that now.
Haha. Any parting words of wisdom for me?
Yeah, just get up every day knowing you're doing something that's good.
Mm.
I think that means a lot. So many of us have jobs where, you go to work and yeah, you might be doing some work that's okay, but you don't have this sense that you're really helping others on a regular basis. You really are. People are being going to be influenced by what you write, both good and bad, and people are going to be, relying on you to tell them the truth about it all. So, when the school's not doing its job, let's say it's lagging in the development of curriculum for AI, or let's say they've made school too easy and people aren't learning enough, or let's say there's a cheating scandal at the school, or let's say the leadership of the school is lining its pockets with funds. Any of those things are still, it's helpful to let people know what's going on. And
Mm.
so that the bad stuff can be corrected and the good stuff can be emulated.
Yeah. So let's forget all about business schools. What's the first thing you're going to do when you finish up with us? I'm picturing you on a wooden deck of a boat, frying up some fish that you've just caught. Is that close to the mark at all?
I think that's true. I'm going to do a bit of travel. I'm going with my wife to Japan for a couple of weeks in May. I've never been to Japan. We're going on a cruising vacation along the Amalfi Coast in Italy as well. We're going to the United Kingdom for a couple of times, one for a wedding for a friend, and then just for a little sojourn, I'll be up at Oxford. Um, and yes, I will be sailing, and I will be riding my bicycle, and I will be exercising, and I will be doing the things that I want to do, reading some of the books that have piled up here, watching more movies, listening to our music, playing with my six grandchildren. Um, you know, um, Going to baseball games in New York with my best friend. I mean, stuff that I haven't really been able to do as much of as I would have liked.
Well, that sounds pretty great. Sign me up for that in 30 years' time.
And I want to cook more too. I cook a lot and I really enjoy cooking. I consider it a Zen-like activity. So I expect to spend a little more time in the kitchen, which I'm actually looking forward to. Good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you.
You are embarking on something unique and special, really. You could do journalism in many fields, But in this field, you will basically influence and shape the lives of many people all over the world for the better.
Mm.
And man, you gotta want to get out of bed and do that every day.
Looking forward. Thanks, Sean.
Hey, and all of you out there, I want to thank you for all the support you've given us. You've been a great audience, and it's an interesting audience because it changes over every couple of years as people move on in their lives after they get their graduate education or whatever. Um, but it's been wonderful to try to help inform the market about the values of this education, the ROI, and even the machinations that go on at different schools, which has been a lot of fun. So I want to thank everyone out there. And now it's all, Pola and Mark Ethier and Jeff Schmidt and Christy and Megan, our entire editorial team. We'll keep this thing going and make it much better than I've ever were able to.
We'll try. We'll certainly try.
Well, Paula, thank you and good luck.
Thank you.